The studio lights burned hot against his face, brighter than the Tennessee sun, and Michael B. Jordan could feel the heat prickling along his jaw as if every bulb in that room wanted to expose something he hadn't done. The audience laughed, not a cruel laugh at first, just the kind that follows an awkward pause. But when the host's tone shifted from teasing to venom, something in the air turned electric. "Why don't you just leave, Michael?" she said, her smile tight, eyes sharp as glass. "Go on. This show doesn't need a pity guest." The laughter grew uneasy. Michael sat there, frozen, his throat dry. He'd come to talk about a charity project, a reading program for kids in small towns, not to be humiliated. Then came the words that carved through the room like a blade. "Go on, boy. Get out. You people always play the victim." The microphone caught it all. No one breathed. The producer's clipboard fell to the floor with a faint slap. Michael stood slowly, jaw clenched, his eyes glistening but unbroken. "You'll regret that," he said quietly, and the silence that followed was louder than any applause. Cameras kept rolling. Later that night, the clip would go viral, 30 seconds of quiet destruction broadcast to the world. But at that moment, the pain hadn't yet settled into anger. It would. To understand how it came to that, how the world's most admired man ended up being thrown off a talk show in front of millions, you had to go back a few days before it all unraveled. The week had started like any other. Michael had driven down to Franklin, Tennessee, a quiet place that smelled of pine and morning rain. He'd promised his late mother he'd open a small community library there one day, and he'd finally done it. A free little library, built out of cedar wood, painted navy blue, nailed to a post near his porch. Kids would stop by, grab a book, leave another. He didn't take donations, didn't ask for attention. He just wanted to give people stories that made them feel less alone. The first morning it opened, he found an old paperback of To Kill a Mockingbird left on the shelf. He smiled at the irony. But peace never lasts long in places that fear change. 2 days later, a city inspector showed up, a woman named Margaret Pierce, sharp suit, silver badge, and the kind of tone that said she'd already made up her mind. "You can't have that here," she said. "City Ordinance 14B. No unlicensed structures on public-facing property." Michael looked at her calmly. "Ma'am, it's just a box of books for the kids. Doesn't hurt nobody." She smiled without warmth. "That's not for you to decide." That night, a letter came, $500 fine, payable within 30 days, or the structure would be removed. He stood under the porch light rereading it, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. He wasn't angry yet, just tired. The smell of rain drifted up from the yard. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, twice, then stopped. He thought of the children who'd visited earlier that day, the little girl who said she'd never owned a book before, and something in him hardened. "Not this time," he whispered. Over the next few days, word spread quietly through the neighborhood. Some supported him, others avoided him, afraid of crossing City Hall. Margaret came by again, clipboard ready. "You could have just taken it down," she said. "Would have saved you trouble." He looked up from where he was repainting the box, the brush steady in his hand. "I built this for people who don't have much. Trouble's already part of their lives. I can handle mine." That made her pause, just for a second, before her lips tightened again. "You'll wish you hadn't." It wasn't a threat in her mind, just a statement. But she underestimated how far quiet people can go when they're pushed too far. Later that week, a local morning show invited him for an interview. "Just a few words about your project," the producer said. "You're doing something good. Let's shine a light on it." He hesitated but agreed. Maybe this was how people would understand what he was trying to do. Maybe someone would listen. The morning of the taping, the studio smelled of coffee and static. Bright lights glared down on the set like interrogation lamps. The host, a woman named Danielle Graves, greeted him with a polished smile. "So you're the movie star who wants to play librarian?" she joked as cameras rolled. He laughed softly. "Something like that." But from the start, something was off. Her questions cut too sharply, little barbs wrapped in smiles. "So this is charity or guilt? Hollywood types love to play savior." He blinked. "It's neither. Oh, come on," she interrupted. "You people always think you can fix the South with a camera and a checkbook." The crew shifted uncomfortably. He tried to steer it back. "It's about community, ma'am. About giving kids a chance to." She leaned forward. "You think this town needs you? We were fine before." That was when the laughter began, not cruel, but complicit. And then, the moment. The insult. A slur that froze time itself. He left the stage. The next day, headlines exploded. Host accused of racial slur live on air. Clips of the exchange flooded social media. But in the chaos, something strange happened. Someone leaked a clip that hadn't aired. It showed Danielle in the break room, joking with the city inspector, Margaret Pierce. They laughed about showing that man who runs this town. The corruption was no longer whispered, it was filmed. By afternoon, the studio's PR team was in meltdown, and the mayor's office began reviewing Margaret's conduct. But none of that mattered to Michael yet. He sat on his porch, staring at the rain pooling in the dirt around his library box. The fine notice fluttered in the wind. His phone buzzed endlessly, but he ignored it. "They'll turn it into noise," he murmured. "All of it." He thought about taking the box down, not because he feared them, but because he was tired of fighting people who confuse kindness for weakness. But then, late that night, a car slowed outside his house. A rock shattered the edge of the library's glass door. He walked over, barefoot in the mud, picked up the stone, and turned it in his palm. Scrawled across it in marker was one word: leave. He looked down the empty streetlights flickering in the drizzle. "Not a chance," he said. By morning, reporters gathered outside. Neighbors whispered from behind curtains. Margaret returned one last time, this time with a demolition order. "You think you can win this?" she snapped. "You're just one man." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, but one man can make a lot of noise if he tells the truth." She tore the notice from his fence. "Then you'll see how loud silence can be." The storm hit that night, real, not metaphorical. Thunder rolled across the valley, the kind that makes windows shake and power flicker. Rain hammered the streets, swallowing the sidewalks, flooding the storm drains. Somewhere down the block, a transformer popped, and the town went dark. In the flicker of lightning, he saw movement by his library. 2 figures, hoods up, tools glinting. He grabbed his phone, turned on the camera, and stepped outside. "Hey!" he shouted. They froze. Another flash of lightning illuminated their faces, city workers. One of them held a crowbar. "Orders from above," the taller one muttered. "We're removing this structure." "In the middle of a storm?" he asked, incredulous. "You'll drown out here. Ain't our problem." He took a step closer, rain plastering his shirt to his skin. "You don't have to do this." The man hesitated, then slammed the crowbar into the post. Wood splintered. Michael raised the phone higher. "Keep going," he said. "Let's show the world what it looks like when good men follow bad orders." The worker's hand shook, then stopped mid-swing. I can't," he said. But the other one kept at it until the box wobbled. Michael lunged forward, shielding it with his body. "That's enough," he shouted. "You're destroying something meant for children." The second man sneered. "Blame your mouth for this mess, not us." Thunder boomed, shaking the street. The camera's red light blinked, catching everything: the fury, the rain, the defiance. And then a gust of wind ripped the box loose from its base. It crashed into the mud. Books spilled out, pages soaking, words dissolving into nothing. Michael dropped to his knees, hands trembling, mud streaking his face. But even as he stared at the ruin, he kept recording. "You can take the wood," he said softly, "but you can't take what it stood for." Behind him, the city truck's headlights flickered in the downpour. Inside, Margaret sat dry and smug in the passenger seat. "It's over," she called out. "Turn that camera off." He stood, rain dripping from his eyelashes, and raised the phone higher. "No, ma'am," he said. "It's just getting started." The engine roared. She stepped out, umbrella snapping open against the wind. "You think you're some kind of hero?" "No," he said quietly. "Just someone who reads the fine print." She frowned. "What?" He pointed behind her. Another car had pulled up, headlights cutting through the storm. A woman stepped out, one of the producers from the show. In her hand was a USB drive. "We need to talk," she shouted over the thunder. Margaret turned pale. The rain intensified, drumming against metal and flesh alike, the air thick with ozone and tension. The USB glinted under a flash of lightning. "What's on that drive?" Margaret demanded. The producer's voice cracked with exhaustion. "Proof," she said, "of everything." The wind howled so loud it drowned their words. Michael took a cautious step forward, eyes locked on the drive, knowing it held the key to every lie they told. But before anyone could move, a deafening crack split the air. A tree branch snapped overhead, crashing down between them in a spray of sparks and wood. The camera fell from his hand. The screen went black. And in that final instant, as the lights of the city flickered and died, one thought echoed in his mind like thunder itself. This storm wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Under the shattered branch, rain poured like liquid glass, each drop slicing the dark silence into trembling ripples that glowed under flashes of lightning. Michael B. Jordan pushed himself up from the mud, coughing, disoriented, his ears ringing from the impact. The producer, Elena, he finally remembered her name, was sprawled nearby, clutching the small USB drive as if it were a holy relic. Margaret Pierce stood frozen a few feet away, her umbrella bent backward by the wind, her face pale and trembling. "Stay away from that," she hissed, voice half swallowed by thunder. But Michael was already moving, not running, just walking through the storm like it didn't matter anymore whether he got wet, whether the city tore down his little library, or the world laughed at him. He had seen the truth. And now, he wasn't afraid of showing it. The USB glinted faintly as Elena crawled toward him, her fingers slick with rain and mud. "They told me to delete it," she shouted. "But I couldn't. You were right. They planned everything, the show, the questions, the slur. It was a setup." He knelt beside her, hand trembling as he took the drive. "You kept it?" She nodded weakly. "Everything's on there. The pre-show meeting, the city call," her voice. She looked toward Margaret, who stepped backward, shaking her head like someone caught in a nightmare. "You don't understand what you're doing," Margaret shouted. "This isn't just about you, Jordan. You're poking at people who run this city. Then maybe they shouldn't be running it," he said quietly. He helped Elena up, shielding her from the rain as lightning illuminated the truck still idling on the curb. The workers inside were watching, confused, unsure whether to help or hide. "Call them off," Michael said. "You've done enough damage tonight." Margaret hesitated, then gave a small nod, her voice barely audible. "Go home," she said to the men. The truck's headlights turned and vanished into the dark. For a moment, there was only the sound of the storm, and the faint rustle of wet pages sticking together in the mud. Michael crouched down, gathering the ruined books, soggy, heavy, words bleeding into one another like memories dissolving. He placed them back into the broken box, each one a fragment of what had been hope. Elena whispered, "We can show them all of this. I'll go to the press myself. They can't bury it if it's already public." Michael looked up at her. "You sure about that? They'll come after you too." "Let them," she said. "I'm tired of working for people who smile while they lie." He nodded slowly. "Then we do this right." By dawn, the storm had passed. The air was sharp and clean, carrying the smell of wet earth and pine. The library post stood crooked, leaning like a wounded soldier. Michael brewed a pot of black coffee and sat on the porch, the USB drive resting on the table beside him. News vans already lined the street, their satellite dishes rising like metallic weeds. He didn't call them. Someone else did. Maybe Elena. Maybe the storm itself carried the story. By 8 o'clock, a journalist from a national network approached, boots sinking in the wet grass. "Mr. Jordan," she said carefully, "we've seen the footage. Do you have a statement?" He took a sip of coffee, the warmth cutting through the damp morning chill. "Yeah," he said. "Tell them it's not about me. It's about what people do when they think no one's watching." Within hours, the clip spread online, raw, unedited, with the studio audio files stitched beside it. Viewers heard Danielle Graves mocking him before the broadcast, heard Margaret laughing about the fine, heard them conspiring to embarrass him for ratings. Hashtags exploded across platforms. Hashtag Justice for Michael, hashtag Free Library Truth, hashtag The Storm Tape. By noon, the mayor called a press conference to investigate misconduct. But no one bought it. The damage was already done. Danielle Graves locked her social media accounts. Margaret Pierce resigned before the city could fire her. The station's CEO issued an apology that sounded as artificial as the smile he wore. Yet for all the noise, Michael stayed quiet. He didn't post, didn't rage, didn't gloat. He rebuilt. Piece by piece, plank by plank, he rebuilt the library, this time stronger, anchored in concrete, sealed against the rain. The same neighbors who'd once looked away now showed up with paint, nails, and thermoses of coffee. Kids came carrying books in plastic bags, their sneakers splashing through puddles. When one little boy handed him a damp copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the same book that had first appeared weeks ago, Michael smiled faintly. "Guess it's been through the storm too," he said. "But still here." The boy grinned. "Like you." That night, the video reached 1 million views. By morning, it hit 10. Reporters wanted interviews, talk shows sent invitations, companies offered partnerships. He refused them all, except one. A small local channel reached out, the same one that had aired the show originally, now under new leadership. The new host was different, calmer, genuine. She asked, "Why not take your story to the big networks? You could profit from this." He shook his head. "Because the story was never about fame. It's about why people stop doing the right thing when it's inconvenient. Maybe this reminds them not to." She nodded. "And what about her? Danielle?" He paused. "Everyone makes mistakes. Some learn from them. Some hide from them. I just hope she learns." A week later, Michael stood outside City Hall, where a small crowd had gathered for a public apology ceremony. The mayor, stiff and uneasy, read from a paper. "We acknowledge the misconduct against Mr. Jordan and the importance of civic kindness. The city will revoke all fines and dedicate funding to public literacy programs." Cameras flashed. Margaret was there too, in the crowd, eyes red, her posture collapsed. When it ended, she approached him slowly. "You got what you wanted," she said softly. "No," he replied. "I got what was fair." She hesitated, then whispered, "I'm sorry." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time saw not arrogance but exhaustion. "Then make it mean something," he said. "Help rebuild." And she did. Over the next few weeks, Margaret volunteered at the library, hammering nails beside children who didn't know her name. Danielle resurfaced months later, issuing a real apology. No teleprompter, no lights, just a shaky video filmed in her kitchen. "I was cruel," she said. "I thought power meant control. I was wrong." People forgave her slowly, the way rain returns to the ground after a drought. Michael didn't respond publicly, but when a reporter asked what he thought, he simply said, "Growth matters more than punishment." The story became legend, a viral parable shared in classrooms and podcasts, a tale about humility and endurance. But for him, it was simpler. It was about the nights when doing good felt lonely, and the mornings that proved it wasn't for nothing. He never sought revenge, but justice found him anyway. A year later, on the anniversary of that storm, the town hosted a Reader's Day festival around his library. The air smelled of popcorn and wet grass. Kids ran around waving paper bookmarks that read "Kindness is contagious." He sat beneath a rebuilt signpost, watching them, and for the first time in a long while, he felt peace. Elena arrived, carrying 2 cups of lemonade. "They're naming it after you, you know," she said with a smile. He shook his head. "Don't. Name it after what it stands for." She laughed. "Then what do we call it?" He thought for a long moment, looking at the sunlight dancing across the pages of open books. "The Storm Library," he said finally. "Because sometimes storms wash away what shouldn't have been standing." The crowd cheered when they unveiled the plaque, but his eyes drifted upward, toward the clouds forming in the distance, calm, harmless. He knew better than to fear them now. The world could rage, but truth had a way of outlasting the noise. As dusk settled, he read aloud to the gathered families, his voice warm and steady. The story was To Kill a Mockingbird, the same copy that had survived everything. When he finished, the children clapped, and one little girl asked, "Mr. Jordan, what does it mean when you say doing right even when no one's watching?" He smiled gently. "It means storms don't last forever, but what you build during them does." Later that night, as the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed, he stayed behind to lock the library. A breeze whispered through the trees, rustling the leaves like pages turning. He looked down at the mud path where the first box had stood broken and whispered, "Thank you, Mom. You were right. Stories can save people." He slipped the key into his pocket and turned toward home. The cameras were gone now. The world had moved on. But somewhere out there, in millions of homes, people still watched that clip, not for scandal anymore, but for reminder that kindness isn't weakness, that dignity doesn't shout, that storms may destroy, but they also reveal what's worth rebuilding. And as the porch light flicked on, illuminating the little blue box that had started it all, Michael smiled quietly to himself. Because the truth he knew now didn't need defending, it just needed time to be seen. And in that light, the rain began again, soft this time, gentle as forgiveness, washing the last stains of that terrible night into the soil where something better could finally grow.